Hello, and welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat Series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Kalogeris for Pragmatic Institute and your host for this episode. Today, we have a new guest on here, so I want you all to meet Rachel Hernandez. She is the Director of Brand Strategy at Nextnet Media. She's had an amazing career in sort of digital content and digital content creation and strategy, including creating Nextnet Media's content department in 2016. She oversees in-house teams and a vast network of 700 plus freelancers. So if you're ever thinking that you're exhausted managing people, just remember that number. But together they generate thousands of really premium content pieces every week. She's also a finalist for Women in Content Marketing of the Year. So she's got the chops. And I think what's really interesting is she's had a front row seat for what's been a really sort of tumultuous, change-ridden 10 years in content marketing. It has changed incredibly, the importance, how it's done, all of those things. And so I thought, what a great time to have Rachel on the show. Welcome, Rachel.
Wow, thank you so much for that introduction. I feel very, very special, which is a nice way to start a conversation with a new friend.
Yes.
So thank you.
Well, you are special, Rachel. So that's how you should feel. I always like to start by asking people sort of their origin story, right? What got you into content marketing? Why are you so passionate about it?
Yeah, I mean, my origin story, I didn't go to school for marketing or anything like that. I had the idea that I was going to be a writer. And I primarily studied fiction and creative nonfiction, but I was the kid in elementary school whose parents got called in, not because I was like misbehaving or being disruptive, but because I always had my nose in a book or I was like reading under the desk. And I was just so obsessed with stories from like a very, very young age. We moved a lot when I was younger too. And that was always sort of my touch point and kind of like how I guess established relationships, like in a sense, as we were kind of shuffling our family around. So I went to college in 2003 to the New School, which is fairly liberal arts college, and pretty quickly realized that I was probably not going to be the next like great American novelist. And so I did wait tables for about 12 years as I was sort of trying to figure out where to go next. And I love what you were saying about like how things have evolved and you know, become in some ways, I think, chaotic, especially recently. And but I also feel super fortunate because when I graduated college in 2006, there wasn't really this digital media space for writers and creators to go to and to be able to use their talents and their skills.
It was really gated, and right? Before all that, it was super gated. You like had to know someone, you had to like thing, and it is democratized.
And that was the thing is like I was trying to break into publishing because I thought that was where, you know, and I think a lot of English majors can relate to. I thought it was like, maybe I'll be a teacher. And then I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. Not for me personally. And so, yeah, I just kind of felt locked out. And then when, you know, digital media and the internet and even things like blogging and even before Google started to really become mainstream, all of a sudden the doors opened and the ability to do things that I get to do that I love became more and more democratized. So that's pretty cool. So yeah, I got in, I cut my teeth as a copywriter. I think I started in 2014. I wrote for real estate agents and then worked my way up on that team to be the main strategist, and then moved into the SEO space in 2016. So that's when I joined Nextnet Media. And I actually started off as an SEO product developer. So I built content products essentially, and some link building products too. And now I've moved into this role of director of marketing, and I market marketing essentially. So definitely has been a journey and definitely had its roots always from the beginning. Everything always goes back to stories and storytelling for me.
Yeah. And I think as we were talking ahead of time, I think what's really interesting is, and what I really want to dive in here are the things about content marketing that haven't changed, right? That are solid, and the needs and the important things that we need to remember. but also particularly in the last, what are we at now? Year and a half. I mean, the generative AI piece has really, really changed also the field, our roles, our strategies in a very different way. So I think, in those last 10 years, what have we seen that's gone totally different? And also like, what is same? What is the places that we need to remember to ground ourselves in always? So what do you want to start with? What's changed or what's the same?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think what's the same, because that's also going to play into what's changed, because we're always going to have to go back to that, and I don't care if AI, no AI, maybe executive team members who are pushing for a particular story. At the end of the day, people are going to respond to your products or your services because they connect to their purpose or their why. And I think that's just always, and I'm in the B2B space, right? And, there are times where I personally have to push back and say, yeah, like we can put in our marketing that we have like the best content or the highest quality backlinks or this, that, or this much experience, which is all like nice things to talk about. But when you're really trying to connect to a human who is looking to trust you and buy from you, what are they really going for? What is the bigger thing that you provide? For us, I always go back to, we make SEO simple because it's a very complex thing to do. And that's where we get a lot of response. And I think people connect with that idea of this thing that's been tough and is expensive. They'll simplify it for me. They'll make it really easy for me to communicate to my team. They'll make it really easy for me to communicate to any shareholders. And that's why I'm going to buy from them, because anybody can sell. Anybody could say we sell links, we sell content, et cetera.
And I think that's particularly true. And I'm going to say a word, which I don't mean none of us think our products are commodities, right? Like, no, we're not. But to the buyer, even when we say we don't have competition, in their mind, there is always something we're competing against, right? How similar it looks to you can change, but there is something out there that you're competing with. And it is both the story aspect, and you talk about like what's in it for them, the purpose, the why. We always talk about, what problem am I solving for them?
Exactly.
Why do they care about backlinks, right? What are they trying to do that makes that important? What is that problem? And making sure that our content talks about that and not, as you said, the features, is really critical. And again, it doesn't matter who's making your content. That is critical.
It's such an easy trap to fall into, I think, especially with product marketing, because internally we are so focused on the features, no matter who you are on the team. And it's so easy to just have that disconnect from who your user base is or potentially is going to be. And it's funny too, because I do recommend doing like competitor research a lot, obviously. But I think a lot of the time, a lot of brands also miss the mark there. So for me, it's always kind of going back and speaking with, your sales team or looking at client feedback or listening in on calls, and what's the deeper meaning of what they're talking about? Why are they actually buying beyond a very surface level need for your product?
When you talk about that competitor and missing the mark there, tell me more about that, because I agree. And I think it's easy to do, but tell me more what you see.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the time, and again, I'm in, I think like many of your listeners, I'm in the MarTech space, right? In the B2B space. And it is a space where I think people are afraid to kind of get creative and to tell stories. So when I look at some of the other people who are playing our sandbox, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, it is a very featured, focused marketing message. And again, like I'm in the SEO space, it's a very saturated space. The differentiation is always going to be that messaging. And that, I think, is something that AI can't create for you. That is the human aspect to it and the storytelling aspect.
Yeah, I see what you're saying there. Like where you look at your competition and instead of being like, okay, they're focused on features, I'm going to focus on stories, you get nervous. You're like, but they're talking about their features. So they say they're 4X. I'm going to say we're 4.5X, right? Like that's how we're thinking of our competition. How do we out-feature them? versus
we're 10x.
Right. Yeah. Right. You're like, I'll just put a 0 on it. No one will know. But right. You get the feeling of like that rat race where I've got to do it that way because that's what they're looking for. But again, it's not about that. It is about understanding who it is that you're talking to, the problems they're facing, and how you can help them with those problems.
Yeah, and that's what makes content marketing fun, you know? That's where that storytelling aspect goes into it. That is where you kind of get to experience and play with a little bit of that magic, and you're not just a rote machine spitting out keywords and phrases and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. You get to make that connection.
That's definitely true too. We all see that where we get more attracted to the SEO words than we are to the story or the point or the audience even, right? When we write too much, for Mr. Google. We sometimes miss the customer. So we talk a lot too, because most of us are also in the B2B space, and some of the things that we think of them, the creative, the storytelling, you know, you see them all the time in B2C, and you and I both agree they're very powerful tools in B2B. So tell me a little bit about when you think of sort of the framework of a good story in the B2B space. What are some of those elements that you try to make your team of employees and freelancers really focus on? What aspects of that story?
I mean, I know it's cliched, but I am a big fan of the hero's journey. And I know that's sort of like a thing that a lot of marketers return to. But I do think it's such a powerful framework for B2B. One, because I don't see it used that often. But two, because I think regardless, it still resonates with people, knowing that, you know, you're just a part of their story and their path to success, and really being able to, you know, not like integrate your product like so strongly, but really make it about them and their path forward. And you just happen to be, you know, a piece of that. Maybe not even, you know, the number one piece, but a piece of that, I think resonates so much and makes so much sense for B2B. Because if you're in this space, like you're helping people grow their revenue. It's about, not that I'm a consumer. I love buying things but there's so much potential for a very, very powerful message there when communicating success and ease and making people's lives easier during their workday, which is unfortunately for most of us the majority of how we spend our days. You know, and again, I always try and move away from feature driven. Well, not always. I mean, there's some bottom funnel feature messaging, obviously, that we do, but that's kind of that's usually my touchstone when I'm coming up with a framework.
And I think that the hero's journey it's proven for a reason. We started with the Iliad, right? But like the other thing, I think you make the good point, a reminder that in the hero's journey, it's not your product that is the hero. It is the customer, right? They are Batman, you're Robin. It's their story. You're helping it. And I think that's important too, because that's what they're going to see it in. Yeah.
That's the connection that you make.
Yeah.
They don't care about you.
No, they don't. They don't care about you or your product or even like how many years you've been doing it. Right. And again, to your point, there's different content for different steps of the funnel, right? Once I get you in and you things, right, then there are some questions they're going to have. There's going to be check boxes. They have to know if your product's going to work in their environment. Like those things happen, but they happen much further down the funnel. And just a spoiler alert for people, the top of your funnel or the bottom of your funnel is not your homepage of your website. Let me be very clear here, right? Like, that is not the bottom of your funnel. But yeah, so that is a place I think for sure. So yeah, I mean, I think to kind of reflect back what you said, it is important in B2B to remember that there are people buying our products and people are buying solutions to their problems. And what we're really focusing on is sort of the purpose, the why, what's in it for them, and telling a good story. That is solid. That has been the same since marketing began, right? But there are some things that have changed. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about sort of the evolution of digital marketing with AI And then let's do that. And then let's talk about like, hey, listeners, this is what you should be doing with AI today. And maybe even a couple of things of like, hey, here's what you should not be doing with AI right now. So let's start kind of like the evolution, how you see a big picture, and then we'll get into some of those specifics.
Even though so much has happened in the past few years with AI, we are still in early days. And so I think, and really like one of the essential elements of generative AI is that it's only going to continue to become more advanced. It's going to be smarter. I know right now, if you have people listening, and I'm sure there are a ton who've been playing around with tools like ChatGPT or similar. And, for me, it's still kind of junk most of the time, especially when it comes to content creation. I can't think of any piece of content I would publish from there that's not maybe like a variation of a subject line or a header that I would use without some very, very heavy editing or a lot of prompting. But I think in a few years, maybe less, maybe a little more, these machines are going to have so much experience with content and reading content and figuring out how people want it formulated that we're going to be shocked at how good it is. That being said, we go back to, again, that hero's journey and really listening to your client. And no matter how smart or intelligent AI is going to get, again, its other nature is scraping from content that's already there and is already existing. And that is an elimination of thought leadership. I do think that's also going to be like the big differentiator moving forward. So that was kind of a long-winded way to get to your question. Right now, I think AI and the use of tools like ChatGPT has really allowed for a very heavy race to the middle. It's very easy to create a lot of content very quickly now. I used to do this talk on the digital summit circuit, and I would say, a benchmark for companies to hit would be 16 blog posts a month. And that HubSpot did a study, it more than triples your site's organic traffic. I would say 16 blog posts a month, people would like have a look of fear in their eyes, and they'd be like, what are you talking? How, who can write that? And like, now you can, now you can write 16 blog posts in, a few hours with ChatGPT. They're not going to be good. They're also going to be scraped from other content that's already there. That's the nature of how the software works. I think there's also an interesting sort of element of this to think about. And I've seen it kind of pop up here and there. I'm surprised that people aren't talking about it more. Is that content yours? Is it actually plagiarized because you had no stake in its creation besides putting a prompt in? And again, it only comes from content that already exists. So I think that's very, very, very interesting right now. But yeah, I think AI's democratized the creation of content. It has not democratized the creation of good content yet. But I do expect to see it get better and better.
Well, and it's interesting too, because people talk about how much content they can create there and they get all excited. And, a lot of the content is around big search terms because, lots of content out there around big search terms, and they think they're making a big progress there. But again, to your point, it is only derivative. That is how it works. And so if you're trying to separate yourself, it's not going to. If you just want to fill in the blanks, that's another thing. Now, I do think sometimes, for some people, it's easier than a blank page for those who aren't writers, right? Where they just think, oh, it's so scary, right? And it gives you something, or to do some, I call it like brainstorming, right? When you're trying to think around things and looking for different angles, I think it could be good. I have used it myself when I have been too wordy. And I'm like, all right, I got to cut some
Well,
words here. Can you give me something? And I don't take, and it's not done, right? But it also helps me because it's hard to edit your own stuff. It's much easier to edit someone else's, right? But so it gives you a fresh look at that for you to go through. But again, I gave it content that was original. It's helping me polish it. Sometimes it's a terrible idea, but it is not. I cannot put a prompt in and think I'm going to get something amazing. I also agree with you, both from the written word and from the illustrations and the artwork that comes out there, that we have a real question on ownership, both of am I stealing someone else's stuff? And not intentionally, right? Well, I mean, I kind of ish, right? I mean, I'm not trying to steal someone else's, but I am using a tool and I know how it works. But also then, do I really have the right, as you point out, to claim it, to copyright it? Because did I do it? Was I, you know what I mean? Like there are some questions here. Those questions are more or less dangerous or they're not, right? Like there are some types of content it can help you do where that question is not as big a thing. But like if you're going to try and do an ebook, if you're trying to do a really weighty gated pieces, the more this thing that you're using it for is tied to your core brand, the bigger those questions should be in your mind and those concerns.
100%. And I mean, from an SEO perspective too, for the first time in years and years and years since I joined the industry in 2016, we're seeing manual penalties from Google and sites being de-indexed. So that was a thing, 10 years ago with their launches of Panda and Penguin. But now we're seeing it again. And one of the things that they're targeting, even though Google can't officially decipher whether content is completely AI generated, there are some sort of things that they look out for, some triggers like volume, like are you posting a ton of content all at once? And they're dinging sites for it. They're pushing them down because bad content that manipulates the search is bad business for Google. Yep. So even something as simple as a blog post or doing a bunch of different product pages and uploading them really, really quickly, that's a trigger that's going to tell Google that your site is not publishing trustworthy. Because again, we also still can't trust these AI answers. Trustworthy, original, valuable content. And
it's interesting that you say they can't know for sure. And that's true. But I also think those of us who, well, if you read stuff, right? I was talking to my friend who she is in marketing, but she also is an associate professor. And she can tell when her students do. And it's not because there are just certain sort of tropes that they get into that you can see. They're very, those kind of things that you can tell. And so,
100%.
Yeah. The other thing that I would love your perspective on, one of the things that people have talked about is that one of the other ways that generative AI may change marketing is people will move from search engines, right? Asking Google for a question to just search is instead almost automatically in ChatGPT, which is a really interesting way of doing it, but also has some serious implications for those of us who do this and are used to trying to build sites that are designed to tell the story to the people, but that, Google will love. Let's be honest, it matters. How do you think that affects sort of our future, and what should we be thinking about now?
In terms of people asking ChatGPT questions instead of going to a Google search, I think a lot of the time that's going to be a top of funnel question. So, and that's also what I think about the launch of AI overviews, which everybody in my industry has been panic SpongeBob SquarePants meme about for the past year. And, I think there is a way to understand, this is an industry that's always been changing.
That's very true.
This is not new.
And it's never slow changing either. It's always been fast.
And it's never a slow change. So my recommendation is generally to keep up with your search engine optimization and focus on your money pages more in terms of your aggressive link building campaigns, your aggressive UX, you're making sure that everything is in line with your technical SEO. And I do think you should be also looking at your top of funnel content too, because AI overviews, I don't think are necessarily a bad thing. I do think it's actually very, very powerful for you to be featured in this search. It includes a picture of your brand. It's really great recognition. If you keep showing up,
it's a nod of expertise, right? If you're showing up,
it's a nod of expertise. And even though we don't have the data yet, like it's not in, Google Search Console, et cetera, I would bet the farm that if you are featured in multiple AI overviews, that authority is being transferred to your entire website, and your money pages, your bottom funnel keywords are also going to reap the benefits of that. So I don't think it is like the apocalypse at all. I mean, people are saying TikTok is, the new search. People are chat GPT. People are going to be searching in all different ways. But at the end of the day, a lot of that's also brand awareness. You want them to land on your website no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything on more than, your website is even more critical. It is feeding more things in more ways for people to find you, for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's an omni-channel strategy. And that's where, I think with ChatGPT, I guess I would say, and I don't do a lot of work with Bing, just because Google has like 97% of the search share, but it is worth mentioning that ChatGPT pulls its data from Bing. So if that is something that you're interested in, and you're really concerned about ChatGPT being the place where you want people to find you, maybe it is worth starting to look at some Bing optimization.
And again, Bing is much cheaper too. So you get the give and take there. So you can own a little more there. When you think about, I think as marketers, this can be very frustrating because we see the limitations of the writing, right? Like if you are a reader and a writer, you read the stuff and you're like, it's not very good, right? No. If you're someone who's just skimming things, it feels plausible, right? And so when they're saying that's plausible and okay, why should I pay more for the better? Like it hurts your soul a little bit because you're like, because it's better and it will perform better. But I think there's both, we see the limitations, but I also think it's a mistake if we stick our head in the sand and be like, the tool's not good. We shouldn't learn it, play with it, understand it, find the opportunities, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I told you my origin story. Like as a writer, it hurts my soul. And we can spot a ChatGPT post a mile away. I've made this comparison before, but I'll make it again. Like if I see, especially with paid advertising, I see this all the time. You can kind of tell when they're using ChatGPT because there's 8 billion emojis in it. And one day I was like, what does this remind me of? And then, and this is not to shame anybody for their choices and how they make money, but it really reads to me like somebody who I went to high school with reaching out to me on Facebook, asking me if I want to like join their MLM or so alienating. So yeah, and again, not to shame anybody, but it definitely has the same sort of feeling to me when I read it. And yeah, I think we're on the same page. These tools are going to get more advanced. That's their nature. Right now, they're kind of trash for most content, to be honest, unless we're doing what we were talking about. But you got to get in there and just start playing around, start doing some prompting, start telling it how to talk in certain voices, et cetera, et cetera. But again, at the end of the day, people are always going to be the tastemakers. They're always going to have to be actual writers, strategists, people who know how the written word is meant to connect to an audience or a video or any other type of collateral you're creating. There's always going to have to be that expert on any team or multiple experts, depending on how big your company is and how many people are working on your marketing collateral. And so I don't think AI is going to steal our job. I really don't. I think it's a tool. Right now, it's an over enthusiastic intern that you wouldn't put in charge of like much of anything. It is going to get better.
Yeah.
It absolutely is going to get better, though.
And that's a good thing, right? When we've figured out how to do it is a good thing. And I think the other thing is I've had this conversation with people. We're like, well, yeah, but the content's not going to hurt me.
No, it'll hurt you.
And even if it didn't, you have to be really, really clear that it will not help you. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it may or may not hurt you, but it's actually not going to help you in the ways that you're trying to build the content to do, right? You want your content to establish your authority. You want it to drive traffic and drive conversions, and this will not do that.
No. I mean, and if we're talking about product marketing specifically, I mean, my goodness, like, again, the biggest issue or the biggest challenge, I think, with product marketing is differentiating yourself from your competitors, as we talked about. ChatGPT or similar is absolutely not going to do that for you.
No. And that's it, the differentiation, which by itself, it can't be because it is derivative. Now, again, there are lots of ways and lots of good prompts that you can do to do all other kinds of things, to brainstorm, to help you draft out and start to think about some of your persona criteria. Again, doesn't replace you talking to your audience, right? And it can help you with the blank page, but it still needs to be you need as a product marketer to bring your expertise, your understanding of the market to whatever it brings out.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. What else? What else would you have people think about with AI before we move on? And like there are good things with it. It's fun. It is certainly fun to play.
Great thing. I use it every day. I work with a software called Copymatic AI too. I use ChatGPT regularly. And like you said, one of the things that you mentioned is one of my favorite things to do with it, which is make this shorter.
Yes. Right?
Make this shorter.
It's hard to trim.
Oh my God.
Yes.
It's hard to trim. Make this shorter. Give me some variations. Give me some other angles. My company is a lot of fun to work for because we do kind of play with like pop culture and we are B2B, but we'll kind of do some fun, cheeky things sometimes. So one of the things that we used ChatGPT for was coming up with a bunch of puns of pop songs because we were doing like a play on the Spotify, and I personally, I would love to sit around all day and come up with like Taylor Swift SEO puns, but I don't have that kind of time. ChatGPT is great for that, Yeah. So there are definitely some use cases that's great for now. Variations too for A/B testing. I love it for.
I agree. I think there's some great A/B testing, particularly around headlines. Some you just have to throw out. Like, the best, the checklist things that sometimes it doesn't get, but it does give you some different angles that you just think, oh, dang, right? Because sometimes we're alone on our keyboard and we're like, ooh, I'm out. Super random note for anyone listening who has kiddos, you can make custom coloring pages on ChatGPT and it's super fun. So my daughter has she likes to call us dinosaurs. So we have an elaborate array of creative coloring pages that are dinosaurs. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to do that for my nephew.
Right? You can do like random things. You can have like dinosaurs eating turkeys. You can, it's kind of fun.
Oh my God.
All right. What else besides AI? Like AI is not the only thing changing in the world. What else have you seen sort of as big trends in the content strategy space?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really loving, and this is also a B2B software brand. I'm loving the cheek. So I know like we had, like Wendy's on Twitter or whatever, like going wild. But one of everybody's talking about Duolingo on TikTok and some of the things that they've been doing. And I think it's actually really exciting and disruptive.
Yeah.
It's bringing a lot of fun back into what we're doing. My favorite, besides our own, my favorite LinkedIn page right now is actually HubSpot.
Oh.
So the CRM tool, it is very Gen Z, very funny. And I am really excited. And to me, it makes a lot of sense because you've got marketing managers,
100% your audience.
They're 100% your audience, and I think, again, a lot of the time people in the B2B space think they're only speaking to they still think they're speaking to a different demographic.
Right. Or that like we leave our
so
personalities at the door. You're like, oh, I'm putting my VP of marketing hat on. I better not laugh. No.
SEMrush has some really great campaigns out there right now too. I actually use SEMrush too.
Me too.
And we're partners. Yeah. But their TikToks are great. They've been doing a lot of really, really cool stuff that speaks to their user base. And so I just think it's exciting. It's getting a little more fun. All of that authenticity, and I know we've been saying this for a really long time, that's not going to stop. One of the things too that I have been thinking a lot about, there's influencer content, obviously, which we've been doing and experimenting with, but Google putting Reddit answers at the top of the SERPs is big. And having like those Reddit campaigns and really is just a really great way not only to build users' trusts, but also to start ranking in ways that like aren't for your website. And I think that's a really exciting omni-channel strategy that people are becoming more in tune with. So
yeah,
it's a lot of good stuff.
Well, and I like the cheeky too, because I am like that. That's my sense of humor that I enjoy. Right. But I also think you nailed it in authenticity, right? Because a lot of the tools you were talking about are ones that appeal to marketers. So, right. Yeah. But there are that authenticity. There is an opportunity to bring a human element to your marketing when you understand your persona. Now, not everybody should be a cheeky little TikTok campaign, but when you think about Reddit is great for your more technical audiences, your data scientists, your engineers, right? Like there are ways to understand your persona and then personify the way they communicate that I think too often is sort of left out of the B2B world.
And I think one of the reasons why I brought up HubSpot too is I love, because LinkedIn is not seen like that. I love the disruption of these platforms where people are used to them being very dry, very, self-promotional, again, very like feature driven, and sort of dismantling that I think is very exciting for people like us.
It's fun to watch. All right. Rachel, we talked about lots of different things today, and it's been a blast. If you could have listeners do 2 things differently tomorrow, based on what we talked about today, get the pressure. What would it be?
I would say, I think going back to the storytelling, I would review your assets. And review your value props and really make sure that you aren't being feature focused. And I say that just because I think it's just the most common thing I see people do.
And the longer you've been somewhere, the better you know your product, the further down in the weeds you get, and you don't even realize it.
100%. And then the other thing I would say is if you're not playing with AI tools, start now, get a Chat GPT. I pay for the premium account, because this is absolutely going to transform, and not just content creation too. I use it for a lot of analytic stuff. I feed it data. I say, if we do like a survey and we've got hundreds of answers, thousands of answers, things that would have taken me forever, I throw them in, I say, summarize this, and
sentiment can be great for that, right? Like, hey, what's the overall feeling? It's great. And it's gotten better and better at the data stuff too. Yeah. Oh, this was great, Rachel. If people wanted to hear more about you or get in touch with you, where should they reach out? So I'm active on LinkedIn, and I'm Rachel A. Hernandez on there, or you can just Google Rachel the Hoth. The Hoth is one of our main companies that I do a lot of work for. And if you like hearing from me, and if you want to see some of the marketing that we do, I recommend following the Hoth on our social media channels. They're all at the Hoth SEO. Say that 3 times fast. We do a really great mix of educational content. We share some resources. And again, we do a lot of fun, cheeky stuff with memes and videos. So it's a good time. Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you and hearing all your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Such a great conversation, Rachel. Thank you so much. And of course, guys, if you're sitting there thinking, all right, I've got to figure out these AI techniques, even with the limitations and how they're going to work for product marketing, don't forget to check out the workshop, Advanced AI Techniques for Product Marketing, Leveraging Generative AI for Enhanced Product Marketing. It's just for people like you, going to go through prompt engineering skills, how to make those to the next level, how to get like specific and effective AI responses, how to take those complex data sets that Rachel and I were talking about and synthesize them all together. It's a great course and it's a must attend. So check out pragmaticinstitute.com. You'll see when they're running all those different workshops, and I absolutely encourage you to go. All right. That does it for today's episode, everybody. Thank you so much for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to help you elevate your product, company, and career.